Good afternoon for those of you joining us from the East Coast, and good morning from those of you on the West Coast. Please take a moment in the chat, introduce yourself, and tell us where you are from. My name is Sean Smith. I am the co-founder of Modern Teacher, and we have a real treat in store for you today. I know many of you were on our webinar on Tuesday where we showcased Eastern York, an amazing school district in Pennsylvania doing some really fantastic stuff with hybrid learning, competency-based learning, personalized learning, and mastery in the whole process. Today, we are so lucky to feature two more amazing districts from the Modern Teacher Network, really putting a spotlight on competency-based education and all that they're doing. We're also super excited to showcase Empower Learning, an absolutely amazing tech tool that really has the power to drive hybrid learning at the intersection of personalized learning and competency-based learning. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Strategic Change Officer from Empower Learning, who will take us away through this webinar and introduce all the other guests that we've got in store for you today. Sean Duncan, welcome to the Modern Teacher Network, and welcome for those of you in the Futures Institute as well.
Great, thanks so much, Sean. I appreciate the introduction. So really quickly, my name is Sean Duncan. Sean just introduced me, but joining me today is Ben Hartlieb. He is our Executive Director of Client Services. And then maybe even more importantly, is we have been honored to have two of our partners join us today. Karen Minshew is the Assistant Superintendent from Cajon Valley, USD in California. And Pam Teal is the Superintendent for Lincoln County School District. So we're excited to have them joining us and sharing a little bit about their journeys that may provide some additional context for the discussion as we go along today. So without further ado, I'm going to pass things to Pam Teal, again, Superintendent from Lincoln County School District, and she will share with us a bit about their journey.
Super happy to be here today. And I think we're all just lucky to have another day where we're in school. Lincoln County is currently serving in-person instruction, but unfortunately, just like the rest of the world, it's a daily struggle to continue to provide that. Let me give you some context for Lincoln County School District. I am a rural county. I serve 4 communities. They're about an hour between the furthest distance between some of my elementary schools. 4 elementaries, 2 middle, 2 high, a juvenile correctional middle school, high school, about 800 students, 79 teachers, 10 administrators, and 1 of me. But it really does take that context of how we serve students. And that is truly the crutch of what Lincoln County School District is trying to do with competency-based education, is ensure equitable outcomes for all students, and really brace for how that change element works in a district. How did we get here, right? So Empower Learning, this is our instructional model that has been working with Modern Teacher to get us on the road path towards competency-based education and an alignment with our rigorous and relevant learning experiences aligned with modern curriculum, housed in a portal that is realistic for all teachers to be able to use. We were on this path about a year ago, not realizing that we were going to be pushed into hyperdrive and needing it quicker than we expected. So happy to be on the path, but then also pushed to where now we knew why we were on the right path. The educational journey for Lincoln County School District, the No Child Left Behind years, we were highly achieving and were awarded a lot of national awards for our achievement. But knowing when we looked at the data in those years, when the frame was going to switch, and we knew it would with Common Core, we were highly achieving but low growth. And so even back in those years, we were looking to see, okay, something's got to shift as we move forward to the future. In 18 and 19, we partnered with the National Institute of School Leadership out of the, I'm going to forget, the National Center on Education and Economy. Fabulous district redesign partnership with them, which really put us into the frame of, we've got to do an alignment of curriculum. We've got to do alignment with high quality teaching and teachers, in alignment with our budgets that put that in our right areas. And so that is when we actually, the following year is when we partnered with Modern Teacher to help us on that modernization of where we were headed with the areas that Lincoln County had identified that we needed assistance in. And that has been huge for us in Lincoln County. And then it was at the end of this year that we, knowing that we were already 1 year into Modern Teacher, that, okay, what platform are we going to be using? And that's when we partnered with Empower LMS, which was competency-based process to get us where we need to go for the future. And the where we're headed for, like the rest of you, with a learning continuum, so that we understand those content areas and standards. Learning progressions and proficiency scales have been huge for us in the last August to now, and diving in to ensure that we understand those. As with everyone else, those standards and courses that we get loaded into the LMS, that making sure teachers are in alignment with that. Right now, our biggest, I would say, struggle is that scoring, to ensure that everybody understands grading, scoring, competency-based, and that's the work we're currently doing in Lincoln County at the moment. And then supporting all the other things that go along with where we want to be for the future. This is a snippet of the target browser for the Empower work we've been doing, where the standards are loaded in, and then we also, then when you click on, you've got the proficiency scales, so that there is a way of actually knowing how we're mastering those standards within a way with the teachers with their playlist also included. Thrilled to, it's a daily battle, and for better student outcomes. So happy to assist as others become on the challenging road that we have ahead, but it is the right road.
Great, thanks so much, Pam. Sean Duncan back here with Empower Learning. So I wanted to just pass the baton to Karen Minshew, who's going to give the perspective of Cajon Valley and where they've been and where they're headed next in this journey. So Karen?
All right, thank you, Sean, and hello to everybody. I wanted to tell a little bit about our story, and then explain how Modern Teacher and Empower are helping us reach our goals. So Cajon Valley, we're in the eastern part of San Diego County. We have about 17,000 students and a pretty diverse population. 70% of our students are qualify as low income, and 30% are English learners. Of those students, we have a high Middle Eastern refugee population here in Cajon Valley. So a little bit about our story. Historically, we've always been a district that cares about students. Our primary focus of success was on a single and kind of sole indicator of state assessments. About 7 years ago, our leadership changed, and our superintendent, Dr. David Miyashiro, came to Cajon Valley, and one of the first things he did was to ask our community members, parents, but mostly business and community right here in El Cajon, for feedback. He asked some simple questions. In education, how are we doing? What's working, what's not working from their perspective? The feedback was pretty clear, and maybe a little surprising at the time. The feedback was that we were stigmatizing labor. In education, even though it's not our intention, sometimes it is. It seems as if we are providing one path for students, and the one path is to college. And we work on that from K through 12. We were looking that we're not preparing our students to help fill community jobs with a skilled workforce. In the slide, I'll get the slide here, just a second. In this slide, this kind of represents what we're talking about. There seemed to be a discrete and a separation between education and work. And our goal is to bridge that gap between a child's education and their place in the world of work. To do this and to bridge this gap, the first thing we did was to develop a vision. What do we really want for students? What would any parent really want for their student? We know it's not about solely about test scores and academic achievement. Our vision became happy kids. Oh, it's out of order. Here you go. Happy kids in healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment. We knew that a traditional curriculum would not get us to this goal and that we needed something new. So we began to develop what we call our modern curriculum and standards based on the skills that we believe students would need to compete in the job market. That included the world of work, our career development curriculum, social emotional learning, presentation literacy, and computer science. We were introduced to Modern Teacher in 2018 and learned how this framework would support our vision and help all of our stakeholders understand the shift to personalized learning and a competency-based system. We didn't want a mission or vision just to live on a boardroom wall. We wanted the vision to be visible in our work and in our student learning. The Modern Teacher framework provided us with action steps and plans to make this happen. It became the backbone of our strategic plan. We needed a tool to make student learning more transparent to everyone. To do this, we created our learning model, and these are our 3 pillars: social emotional learning, personalized learning, and rigorous and relevant learning. It's what drives what we purchase, what we provide in professional learning, and how we engage our community. Our work in Modern Teacher has been an invaluable resource during this time, navigating both our distance and hybrid learning models. Last spring, we solidified our partnership with Empower. We were looking for an LMS that focused on capturing student learning and growth, a system that would allow students to engage more deeply in their own learning and their goals, a system that would reflect our learning model. Our concern was identifying a tool that would simply reorganize or replace existing online lessons. Empower offered something unique, a personalized system in which we could create customized student learning plans and progressions around our learning model and modern curriculum. For the first time, we'll have a system that provides a personalized modern curriculum around students' strengths, interests, and values. We have a way to track their growth and progress and data to address individual needs. With Modern Teacher and Empower, we feel we are much closer to meeting our goal of happy kids in healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment. Thank you for letting us share a little bit about our story, and I will turn it back to Sean.
So much, Karen and Pam. One theme that I really kind of noticed stood out there was both districts really highlighting a need for providing equitable opportunities for students and really making that shift to things truly being student-centered. So hopefully that provides some good context for where we're headed next in terms of showing a platform that embodies really that philosophy from its very roots. So again, joining me is Ben Hartlead on screen there. So I'd like to start off by just highlighting highlighting some of the challenges and some of the potential solutions. This is by no means intended to be an exhaustive list, as we could spend our entire time here focusing on simply the challenges that we're faced with nationally and internationally. So, but some of these here to highlight some, obviously an unexpectedly changing learning location. Just this morning, I received news from my large district that our third grader is in, that things are likely to change as soon as next week. And then they may change from there again in within days as we see a dynamic and shifting environment out there. So obviously that's a challenge for everyone. Competency-based education and standards-based grading typically requires a lot of scoring and clerical work. So there is a need to have a platform that can help teachers and administrators manage that work. Finding a tool that actually does all of this effectively is a challenge. Some systems can handle some parts of it well and not all parts of it well. So really having a cohesive approach. And a lack of ability, generally speaking, to identifying what students' individual points of need are. Can we pinpoint exactly what they need right now? So some solutions that we'll take a look at today are a notion that we at Empower Learning call Evergreen data. That's this idea that at any given moment, stakeholders can see what a student's performance is against standards overtly throughout any time in their career. So teachers can look at that, parents can see that, students themselves can see that. And really what we're driving towards is making a learning environment really irrelevant. And we'll take a look at that. Technology to monitor learning anytime, anywhere, as we know that changing dynamic creates that need for location not being relevant. Clear metrics of progress and pace, and the ability to know what each student knows now, as I mentioned. So areas that we'll cover specifically today with showing how the system addresses these, really codifying the curriculum. Where does that live? That was shown briefly by Pam in what Lincoln County is doing, and we'll show that more in depth. Instructional playlists that are, I put in quotes here, future-proof. I was on Tuesday's webinar. If you've not had a chance to listen to that, great opportunity and some fantastic work that I'd give a shout out to Eastern York for that they're doing. But they mentioned this idea of future-proofing instruction, and it's really this idea of work that we do now lives indefinitely, and we really have a way to archive that. So we're not recreating the wheel, but we're really being efficient about how teachers create that work. Gradebooks will cover evidence and standards gradebooks. Those are two very different views in our world. Student guardian portals, and then teacher and admin tools. So making the shift, really what we have is a system where competency-based education and standards-based grading, if we go with that term, depending on where your system happens to be in that continuum, one challenge that we really have to be mindful of is constantly having a pressure to achieve. If we don't apply that pressure, we may experience a situation where students get to year 12 and have quite a bit of content not yet mastered. Obviously, that's a situation that creates some difficult decisions to be made at a school or district level. So while schools may be closed, depending on this changing dynamic environment, we want to ensure that we have a system, really a digital ecosystem in place where learning is always open despite what the building might be happening at the building level. So this really kind of begins with, again, I mentioned that Pam showed what we call the target browser. Instead of wading into necessarily our terminology, this is simply where that scope and sequence for a district or a school lives. Let me just kind of direct you around this. This might be a little bit much to look at, but if you look at the top there, our content area is ELA. We've got a class AP ELA 9. And then in this case, just immediately below that, we're demonstrating or have selected here, in this case, some grade bands. Many of our partners still operate within a a grade level environment, and that's completely okay. This one just happens to be demonstrating a system working in grade bands. But you'll notice going right below that, we've got strands and then the standards themselves. What we're looking at right here is the scope and sequence for that single class, and you'll notice overlaid with each one of those colored boxes there is a real-time view of where the students in that particular class are against the set of standards that has been identified for that particular class. So in this system, they might have, say, 15 prioritized standards that they're tracking student progress and growth against. And we're seeing that right here in real time through those bars on each one of those. So here we can see that the one that's highlighted here under supporting claims, that that standard, we've got 4 students who have already completed that, 3 that are working on it, and none that have not yet started. But it gives us a dipstick check as a classroom teacher for what's happening in this particular class. So this is where our guaranteed and viable curriculum lives. And that is a foundational component to our platform.
So those blocks that you were looking at, those are like Lego blocks, the standards. And with those, we build everything else. And we're looking at here a unit plan, what we call playlists. So Empower's not just a grade book or a place to house your standards and curriculum. It's a full-blown LMS. And this is a peek at our instructional tools. This is a Shakespeare playlist. It would be a unit that's being taught and designed by a teacher. And I want to show you a lot of really neat things here. First of all, we see all these tiles here. These are different activities, quizzes, even some cool things like voice and choice, where we can allow opportunities for students to choose their own adventure, give them options about how to learn within this framework. But think of this kind of as a timeline. And so students have the opportunity to work their way through this and talk about future proof. What's really neat here is this functions doubly as both my lesson plan and as a way to deliver this digitally to learners. I get in here and I can create something really cool and I can share that. We'll look into that a little bit later, but these are things that once I create, I can use over and over. I can share with colleagues who can tweak these things and make them their own. And even as the environment changes, I'm able to make real-time shifts here. It's really fun to build these. You see the little bubbles off to the side. I can drag and drop things out here and get a chance to really work on these. We're going to dig in here, and I want to drill in and show you what some of these things look like inside. So let's zoom in on this Hamlet activity. Oh, before we go there, I forgot. I want to show you this. Notice the little numbers in the upper right-hand corner. So I may be differentiating in the classroom, maybe allowing students to work at the point of their need. And here I can see I've got 2 kiddos working on Hamlet. I've got 3 that are up on Midsummer Night's Dream, etc. And this is a GIF, but it looks like the software's not allowing the GIF. But in the upper right-hand corner, you see where the cursor is? It says Show Groupings. Now, if I were to flip that, Empower's going to pull away all of the activities that no student is working on. So whether we're together and maybe working in pockets, have students working in different places, or have students working remotely, this is a great tool for me to manage my classroom. And I'll be able to see where students are working, drill in, see what they're working on, and maybe do my call outs, maybe do Zoom meetings with kids and really meet them at the point of their need. So let's drill in here on Hamlet. When we build an activity in Empower, the first thing that we do is we're going to align this to our standards. Like I said, those are the building blocks with which we build everything. And what we want to do on this page is we're going to search that target browser and we're going to find, what am I addressing? What am I learning here? And what things do I want to score? So this has a twofold purpose. It's going to immediately inform learners what to look for, what the expectation is. But additionally, because this is connected with our gradebook, when I make a Hamlet activity, when I align it to standards, Empower's automatically populating the gradebook that we're going to look at in a few minutes. And it's giving me slots to score this. And we can even identify the level of learning that's going on. So maybe we're looking at a target, but we're only learning it, we're just beginning to learn it. We're just going to learn some vocabulary maybe about iambic pentameter. I can set the rigor of expectation down, and Empower's going to understand, and this is going to help us adjust our calculations in a few minutes that we're going to see, and the way that Empower communicates progress to learners. So we're able to guide them through the learning in a really granular and specific way. On the next tab here, when creating an activity, once we've outlined the goals of the activity, this is the fun part to me. We get to go and find resources from all over the internet, from our own hard drives. You can put anything in here, and we're a Google single sign-on tool, so you'll see a lot of Google tools there, but it's really easy. If I just type in a search term, I can search YouTube, I can find Google images, we can pull the text of the play, the Wikipedia article, and even my own Google Drive. So if you're already working in a Google environment, a lot of people are using Classroom, now having gone remote. All of that work is going to port really well into Empower, and I can pull things directly from my drive, and we piggyback on the Google environment. I can deliver something in my drive. I can ask Empower every time a kiddo opens it to make a copy of that, so they could work on a worksheet right there in the Google Drive environment. I could use the annotations and all the kind of collaborative tools that Google has. They turn it in, I get an alert in Empower, I give it standards-based scores. There's a really good back and forth workflow. We even have LTI connectivity. So if you're using other third-party tools, if they have LTI capabilities, then we can work to make connections there so that anytime, anywhere learning happens, Empower's there, able to help monitor and manage it.
Thanks, Ben. So Ben just covered kind of the goals tab and the resources tab. The action plan is where the teacher really creates the scaffolded lesson, for this particular activity. And there's opportunity here, as we mentioned, that future proofing at the outset of, again, I love that term. This is really where that future proofing is manifest. Again, it's the scaffolded step-by-step instructions that we want to provide to our students. And I'll show in a minute what that looks like on the student side. We're looking at this from the teacher side right now. But I want to just draw your attention to some of the things here. So in that first step, we see to begin, let's watch this video. And right there underneath that is the actual resource that we've aligned to that we identified in the resources tab that Ben just covered. If you look at that third bar there, notice that it's a different color. There's a specific reason for that. It's because there is a toggle that exists that allows us to really migrate between what's viewable to the students and what is only viewable to the teacher, him or herself. This is really important because for the one we're showing right now, that's obviously an answer key that we don't want to share with the students, right? It also highlights the fact that teachers can build in steps here that only they see for their own reminders on how to teach something. I know that when I was in the classroom, having something that really lives beyond just a single moment in time and a single time that I've covered it in a particular year, but lives beyond that, I can give reminders to myself of, do this next time, or repeat that activity. It worked really well, but tweak it in this particular way. There's another really important functionality here that is particularly appropriate for the environment where we may be switching between in-person, hybrid, and remote. If you think about this, if we're currently in an in-person environment, for example, we might create the language and the directions in each one of these steps that might be appropriate for in-person instruction. That does not automatically make it relevant to a virtual environment where students are at home. So what we can do is, if we do make that switch, we can simply toggle that step to be unviewable by the students, and replace it with a step that is viewable to the students so that we have an opportunity to, without deleting anything, easily migrate across environments. We've also future-proofed ourselves in that we're just simply archiving all of this solid, good planning in one environment. So I mentioned a minute ago that I would show what this looks like on the student side. So here's an example of that. This is that same action plan. You know, we created those action steps we were just looking at. Those colored steps now are represented in that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that are at the top there. So again, just let me orient you here. If you notice, we're looking at the action steps. However, if we even take a step back, look at that goals tab is the first tab right underneath Hamlet. That is where the students transparently see exactly what my expectations as their teacher are for them. So it is absolutely transparent. Now, if there is a proficiency scale or learning progression that is tied to those goals, they have the ability to click on that and see what is the simpler content in that goal, and what does the teacher expect of me, you know, where in that learning progression do they expect me to get in this particular activity. So it's very, very finite in terms of the expectations. So here, just coming back to this action tab that we're on right now, this is the overt instructions that are being given to the students. Notice that speaker on the right side there, just above the resources. We can, especially for younger students, turn on what is called the step reader. So the computer will literally, the program will read word for word, time to take a deep dive in analyzing Hamlet's character, etc. So they can get that assistance that they need. And then down at the bottom, they have the ability to work with this step and do what's being asked of them, whether it's typing in a text box down below, creating a drawing, attaching a file for their computer. Since, as Ben mentioned, we are a Google single sign-on tool, we integrate with those Google tools. They have access to anything that they would have access to in their Google environment. So super helpful in terms of making it easy for them to respond. So kind of making that shift away, we're still within that activity from the student view, but wanted to highlight some of the messaging capabilities. We can allow for messaging and feedback to occur right within those activities. So it's tethered to that specific activity. We're not going to cover it today, but just be aware that there are messaging tools that are available for teachers to message to students within an activity or to a class. So lots of opportunities to increase the level of communication there, which is obviously increasingly important as we move to more hybrid and virtual environments. So also an option, when Ben showed the Shakespeare playlist, that unit plan that was created, we can create assessments within Empower. And this really is critical in that, as we all know, unfortunately, with what happened with a kind of nationwide shutdown in the spring of last year, really created what we worry about are gaps in student learning. This really defines a need for being able to nail down what exactly those gaps are. So we can do that through the creation of assessments, and assessments are aligned very, very specifically to specific standards, and even one level below that into a specific level within a learning progression for a standard. So we can get very granular in terms of our understanding of where individual students are in their understanding of the content of that guaranteed and viable curriculum. So what you're looking at here is a Hamlet quiz. We're just highlighting that this is a 4-question quiz, and you're seeing just an option of a closed-ended assessment item type. Now, if we can support closed-ended assessment types or open-ended. Now, the nice thing about those close-ended is that we can provide self-scoring on those. So once students, when we created these, or when we create these, we identify what the correct answer or answers are for a particular item. And then Empower can auto score those to just take a little bit of the burden off of the teacher. Particularly important in this environment when teachers their cups are overflowing right now, right? In addition to that, when teachers create these items, they can save them to an item bank. And since they're aligned to specific standards, any teacher in the future can pull that assessment item and create their own brand new assessment that is already standards aligned. So really important ability there. When teachers are creating these types of resources, super important that we allow for collaboration in much the same way that the Google environment allows for collaboration. So what you're looking at here is, this is a sharing from within a playlist. So teachers can nail down who can access this particular playlist or activity. They can have that be private, they're just simply still working on it, or all teachers, or really make it accessible to all stakeholders so that parents themselves can see those as well. And then we can also assign editing rights to other individuals within our system to really facilitate that idea that we're going to allow for a shouldering of the burden in a distributed fashion and help one another out.
Now that we've looked at some of the instructional things in Empower, we're going to turn our attention to the scoring side. And there's some really neat things that set Empower apart from other systems here. I'm excited to show you. This is an evidence gradebook. So what we see here is kind of like what you might see in a lot of programs, or even what you might have used to keep in your spiral binder. We've got our kiddos over on the left, and across the top, we've got the activities that we're working on with this class. What makes this gradebook different and really powerful is notice allegory there. I'm not giving one score for allegory, but 3 in this case. Each of those columns underneath allegory is a standard or a learning target. So instead of reading an allegory essay and saying, hey, I read your essay and it was fine, here's a C. That doesn't really tell me what we want to know in this system, which is, what does this student know now? And I want to know that answer specifically. So here, when we created an allegory activity, we aligned it to standards. So I might want to see that you understood the text of that we read, that you understood character motivations, that you turned it in on time, or your spelling and punctuation were okay. It's a great opportunity to do some cross-content design, and it's a really, really important chance to focus in on the actual needs of learners. To say, look, you're super at understanding the character motivations. That you're rocking. Your grammar and punctuation needs some work. So over time, what we do in the classroom is we gather evidence about all these different standards that we're responsible for, that we're working with the students on. And what we're going to do in the next few slides is kind of show you an evolution of how do we go from work in the classroom and evidence that we're gathering anytime, anywhere. It can be paper, pencil, it can be digital stuff we just showed you, it could be out on a field trip. You can put that in this gradebook as evidence. And then as we grow, we're going to see how we take that evidence and we can make summative decisions and use that evidence to convict a kid, if you will, of knowing or not knowing this material. And that drives what we do with them moving forward. So this really specific ability to understand what the student knows now, you'll see is going to help inform what they should learn next. So I want to drill in on this evidence gradebook and just call out one of the big needs that we have heard over and over as we've worked with districts adjusting to remote learning, having to get into digital systems. One of the early presenters said they had to get into Warp Drive. Getting thrown into this, one of the questions that happens repeatedly is the clerical stuff, as Sean said. How do I keep track of assignments and what's missing and what they've done and who doesn't need to do what? And maybe this child needs something this child doesn't. Empower's built for that. You can see here different ways that we're noting that. Things that are overdue, things that this child is excused from, things they did well on, things they struggled with. All of that here really visible at a glance in this gradebook. Now here what you see is flipped the switch. Up in the right-hand corner, you see there's a score evidence. That's what we were just looking at. I'm in the classroom, I'm gathering evidence, we're doing work together. And I flipped the switch and I want to look at the summative scores. They're actual scores on the standards. And this slide is labeled seeing gaps, historical gaps. And you see up there again one of our favorite terms, evergreen data. So let me call this out. The way that this gradebook is different is now across the top, instead of seeing the activity titles that we did, I see standard titles, in this case, codes. This school's using codes. So these cells now represent what the student knows now about the standards, perhaps based on evidence that they did with a teacher last year, perhaps based on something they did with a different teacher up the hall. We gather that evidence, and in a few slides, we're going to show you how to drill in and make these decisions. But look at Aaliyah there across the top. She's got a 2 on that third cell. That means she's done some progress here. Now, what's neat is I may never have met Aaliyah in my life. This may be the first day of class. I could pull up a gradebook that looks like this. I'm not getting a blank slate. I'm not starting over with kids and rehashing stuff that's perhaps they've all mastered. I'm able to look and get a very accurate historical assessment of where they're at presently, or where the last entry was for them. I can drill down on that, get a lot of info. I can see kids who've never done this. So if we were to begin working on something more advanced, I can avoid that mistake by looking here and saying, this learner's not ready for this. This learner's never encountered maybe a prerequisite skill for this. And that's because Empower keeps their data evergreen. It's always there for us to learn. It's to look at. It's always we're always honoring the student's work. Kids love this because the work that they do is going to be honored. When they've mastered something, they've got that in their record, and they're able to really own their learning and stay at the point of need if their teacher is allowing them to continue to kind of work on the edge of their knowledge. They stay engaged, they stay interested, and we make sure that nothing is missed. Again, there are going to be gaps because of COVID. There are going to be students that you get next year who you're going to dive into the 6th grade stuff, but they didn't have a normal 5th grade year. And this system, schools that are set up like this are going to know that, and they're going to be able to fill those gaps. They're going to be able to take the time and make sure learning happens, and that students don't just get more and more behind as we roll forward with, again, perhaps continuing variables like we've had. You're muted, Sean. Sean, you're still muted.
Sorry, folks.
There you
Things
go.
that Ben mentioned was having tools and allowing some tools to help inform decisions on where we place a student in terms of like what we might call a summative grade. At some point, we're going to reach a point where we have to make a summative decision, at least for a moment in time that represents some interval of time, right? We have partnered with Dr. Marzano to create and integrate something called the True Score Estimator. Now, this is just an ability to take a body of data points and provide some mathematical direction on where that student should be placed right now. So what you're looking at right here is if we look at the student Aaliyah, who Ben mentioned earlier, we provide several different calculations and even go so far as to make a recommendation on where their score should be placed. So on the far right, well, you'll see their blue score, the 2.5, that's their current score. That can easily be changed. Then we provide 3 different calculations: a linear calculation, a power law, and the average that in a more traditional system we're accustomed to seeing. So what's happening here is the green one is highlighted, and I'll show you on the next slide how we sort of arrived at this in a graphical way that'll really make it more apparent. But down below, what are these recommendations based on? These are the actual data points, meaning the scored evidences that this student has received. Now, I will tell you up front that on this slide and the one I'm going to show you next, for this particular topic of supporting claims, which is listed in the blue bar up at the top, so this is a single standard, it may not be realistic that a teacher has assessed that particular standard this many times. However, the real takeaway is to just say that this is from the students, or the teacher's view rather, and we can look at their scored evidences as a reminder. If I wanted to dip into that Seawolf essay at the top left under the scored evidences, I have the ability to click on that and view that again if that was maybe my most recent assessment that I administered to the students, and I can just have a reminder. We can also automate this. So the point here is that the mathematical equations are just informing the teacher and helping provide them some direction on what they might choose. As you can imagine, if we've got a body of evidence, bunch of data points over time, they may not always follow a nice progression upward. We may occasionally get a score that really deviates from what a trend may have been. It makes it increasingly challenging for a teacher to decide, well, because of those outliers, where do I place this student? We're giving the tools through the estimator to be able to help inform that decision. Ultimately, it can still be in the power of the teacher to make that final decision. That current score, that 2.5 in blue, the teacher always has the ability to make that final call. They are the professional. But we can allow for some automation to take, again, some of the lift off of teachers' shoulders. So graphically, what does this look like? This is the true score estimator and same information. We're not looking at the evidences, but rather looking at how those three trend lines chart out. The data points there, the green dots and the purple dots, simply represent actual observed scores. Those are the scores that the teacher actually input into Empower. Again, probably not realistic that we're going to have this many data points for a single standard, but it allows us to show a nice distribution across these three methods. So this really allows us to make, again, that informed decision. The green highlight is simply mathematically which was the most reliable. If we compare the actual data points to these three different calculation types, which one has the least amount of variance in that? And that least amount of variance we would determine would be the most reliable score, and that's the one that we're going to recommend. And for Aaliyah, that happens to be using power law. For the next student, it might be the linear, and for another student, it may even be the average. Again, giving us some information to make some informed decisions.
Now I get to show you what the student sees, students and guardians. Students and guardians, Portal and Empower is pretty much identical, with the guardians having the ability to toggle between their kiddos. But this gives a chance, first of all, the students are often the ones that teach the parents how to use the program. But additionally, they have a lot of visibility. And we know they're seeing the same things. There's so many neat things here I'd love to take the time to show. I just get to show a few. Basically, you can see this kiddo is in English class. They're in guitar class. And these kind of accordion up. And I get some information right on the top. A present pace that's happening there. How many standards are we working on? Where am I at? Is the child behaving themselves? In this case, they're calling that code of cooperation. You can see that score. And then guitar, we've unfolded and we dig in a little bit and we see a few fun things. The next up section there, you see those tiles, you'll remember those are akin to the Shakespeare tiles we were looking at. So as the student progresses through their work, what's the next thing for them? I did my Hamlet quiz. And then Empower's going to intelligently present them with the next thing, be that the next thing in sequence, things that are overdue, things that have learning that the student needs next, There's a few different opportunities here to present the student with opportunities to continue on. And you can pin these. So teachers have a lot of control here too. You see some of these have those pins highlighted. That means the teacher pushed this to the front for it to get attention. Students can browse their playlist. They can follow the learning path up top. That is a graduation tracker, and high school students can kind of see a visual of their transcript and how they're progressing toward the credit they need. They can access the target browser where we began, all those colorful tiles, and see all those things and see their progress through the entire scope and sequence. Just tons of visibility, whether that's from the bird's eye view or drilled down literally to the letter. You can have checklists in here that are maybe address the alphabet, and parents can know up to the minute, down to the letter, exactly what where their student is and what they need to know next. I want to highlight this, again, a piece that really sets Empower apart. Such a vital piece to doing personalized learning, competency-based learning. You need to continue to apply pressure to achieve, as Sean said before. You need to have a lever that motivates students and informs lay people, if you will, parents who may not be familiar with the scoring scale you've chosen or the concept of standards, and they want to see something right away. Parents want to know, how's my kid doing? Do they have friends? And we can't help with the second one, but this is our metric for the first one. How are they doing? Well, these bars cover the content being covered in class, the standards, and every time a student progresses, that blue bar fills up. The bar just to the left of that is this course. How long does this course exist? And by the end, will you master these 5 standards? So the student just wants to keep ahead of that gray bar with their actual course pace bar. And that's the metric to know that they're doing all right, or they should pick up the pace a little bit. You see a similar bar there that's showing them credit toward graduation. Are they going to achieve graduation credit in time to get this year? And then one other thing I'll highlight on the student page that I think is great, especially in a remote environment, and especially with the technology making this possible, is the ability to give students a lot more ownership. They can actually create an activity. So it may happen, it does happen, that students look at their learning path, they look at their target browser, and they say, oh, I'm missing something here. I was absent. Maybe we were quarantining. Maybe we were on a trip. That was the line I used to say, but that doesn't happen very often this year. But for whatever reason, there's a gap in the learning, and maybe that's not being offered in the class I'm in, but I can create an activity. I'm going to build a doghouse. I'm going to film it, and I'm going to flip the script. I'm going to turn this into my teacher and say, hey, I squared this up with the Pythagorean theorem. I know this stuff. And I assign it to a teacher who can enter an evidence for me. But this is such a fun way to have students be able to really own this learning, be involved, and use this data.
Just really quickly, I'm going to wrap up with a couple of views at maybe some reporting capabilities that really provide the data that teachers need to use to make decisions, administrators might use to monitor how effectively Empower is being used. So what you're looking at really quickly is just a class pace view. So at a glance, we can get, this is from the teacher view, we can see across this particular class how each one of the students is doing against the pace. There are tools. This can either be automated, as Ben mentioned, or this can be drilled down and set pace, an individual pace goal for each individual student. So dipping into that personalization. A couple of other reports I'm going to highlight, and then we'll turn it over for some Q&A. Turn it over back to Sean. So some teacher engagement statistics. I know a big issue that's going on is how do we, in a remote environment, take even something as simple as attendance. Of course, we can do that through just simply looking at logins, but the tools that are built into Empower allow us to go beyond that and really measure academic engagement through taking a look at what kind of activities, how many times is a student accessing activities, submitting evidence, submitting quizzes, and posting messages. The message piece might even dip into this idea of social engagement. So much beyond just getting the work done. And then lastly, this is a bit much to look at, so I'm not going to dip into the specifics here, but this is a teacher more looking at things through the teacher engagement and how they're utilizing Empower. So the names there on the left-hand side, those are our teacher names. So the first part there, bottom there, that measures student pace, we're looking at how many students are on pace, how many are ahead, how many are behind. Within the teaching practices, how well are they assigning playlists to students? How are they conducting their scoring? Are they scoring against those playlists? And then how many playlists are they actively using at a given point in time? So again, how effectively are they using the tool that they have available to them? So just a quick view towards that. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sean. I'll leave up my contact info. I did just kind of see in the side there was a request for some contact info. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about anything that we've presented today.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was great. We actually went right up to the hour here. So the good news is I think we covered all of the questions that we had in the chat. We were able to respond to. We had a handful of technical questions about the content, interoperability, and I do think that we have answered a lot of those. If you want more information, you see Sean's information here is on the screen, and I just want to really underscore the value proposition here is really the ability to build out a personalized learning ecosystem based on mastery and based on competencies, and a real tech tool that really allows for the ability to put in learning progressions into your curriculum, which we know can help differentiate and personalize the pace for kids in a lot of different ways. And I think that's the big part of this value proposition. There are probably 100 more features and functions that I know the team from Empower would love to show you if you're interested in this and want to go to that next level. But the biggest thing to kind of walk away from is this real tool to be able to kind of move to this model if that's something that your district is thinking about. And I know in our Modern Teacher Network, we've got a lot of districts that are thinking about that. And for those of you that are not in the Modern Teacher Network, thanks for joining us today. This is one of our partners in this work, and we were super excited to showcase them. And then also a big shout out to Pam from Nevada and Karen from California, two amazing leaders that are really just leading great work in their districts as well, and really trying to show us how they're navigating this remote and hybrid world in the context of still trying to move personalized learning forward in their districts while putting in the technology tools to support their instructional infrastructure. Great stories from them as well. So with that, we are at the top of the hour. Thank you very much for our team from Empower. If you've got more questions, here's where you need to turn. Sean's got his contact information on here in terms of his email and his cell phone. From all of us at Modern Teacher, thank you for those of us in the Modern Teacher Network. And for those of you that are not in the network, reach out to us, visit our website if you're interested in learning more. We've got lots of opportunities to share that with you. From all of us at Modern Teacher, I'm Sean. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.